Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When ex-DoD engineer Graham Coulter moved off-grid to the Arizona desert, all he wanted was silence and sovereignty. What he got was a war. A rogue HOA forged documents, broke into his land, and tried to steal it out from under him. They had no idea who they were messing with. I bought this land to be left alone. 10 fenced acres in the sun-blasted stretch of southern Pinal County, Arizona. Dry, dusty, and absolutely perfect. No neighbors within shouting distance. No barking HOA newsletters about mailbox colors or festive flags. Just space. I spent 17 years working for the Department of Defense as a structural engineer. Now I design resilient off-grid housing systems for private clients, mostly veterans and rural homeowners who, like me, don't like being told what to do with their land. The plot sits on the southern edge of a newer development called Whitetail Heights. They've been slowly creeping outward with their soulless stucco homes, artificial turf, and little wooden signs advertising community order. Progress. You can imagine how allergic I am to all three. Still, I stayed out of their way. My land isn't part of that development. I triple-checked it before buying. I had the original deed, legal surveys, and a signed HOA exemption from the original developer, Ironclad. For nearly 6 months after I moved my modular home onto the property, life was quiet. I was building out a prototype structure near the west end, testing solar panel racks, doing drone inspections, living clean, until one bright Thursday morning someone buzzed the front gate. It wasn't a delivery or a friend. A white Lexus SUV sat just outside my property line, perfectly polished, its driver's window lowered with a silky hum to reveal a woman in her 50s, flawless makeup, a blazer too expensive for this climate, and eyes that scanned like a Border Patrol drone. She didn't wave, she stared, then smiled. The kind of smile you practice in front of a mirror for court appearances. "Mr. Coulter," she called out. I stepped just past the gate's shadow, hands on my hips. "Can I help you?" She exited her vehicle and walked up like she owned the place, heels crunching against desert gravel. "Karen Howley, I'm the HOA president for Whitetail Heights." She offered her hand but didn't wait for me to take it. "I've been meaning to stop by and introduce myself. We like to keep a good relationship with our extended neighbors." "Extended," I repeated. "I'm not part of your HOA." "Oh, yes, that's what the paperwork says. But as we like to say, community doesn't stop at a property line." Her smile didn't waver. "We just want to make sure we're all safe and coordinated, especially with fire season coming." I raised an eyebrow. "And what does that have to do with me?" She held up a crisp folder and opened it with ceremony. Inside was a generic printed form, Emergency Community Access Authorization, and below it, a request for 3 sets of gate keys, to be kept at the HOA security office, clubhouse, and fire liaison desk. "Just in case," she said sweetly. "We've had situations in the past where emergency services needed quick access. You understand. We're all just trying to be prepared." "No," I said flatly. "I don't understand." Her face froze for a second, then recovered. "Well, you must care about your neighbor's safety. My land is private. Your development was built next to me, not the other way around. I don't owe your board access to anything." "It's not about owing. It's about cooperation." She stepped forward slightly. "I think you'll find most homeowners are very eager to work with us. It's not unusual." "Then I guess I'm the unusual one." Karen's smile dropped half an inch. "Are you refusing to provide access keys?" I folded my arms. "I'm refusing to pretend this is normal. You're not entitled to keys. And just so we're clear, this land is not under your jurisdiction. You don't get to dictate terms." There was a long pause. Then she exhaled, composed again. "Well, that's disappointing. We do our best to avoid misunderstandings in Whitetail Heights. I hope you don't come to regret being difficult." And just like that, she turned and walked back to her Lexus. I watched the SUV glide down the paved road like a shark slipping beneath the waves. An hour later, I installed a second set of chains on the main gate and added a 4th private property. No trespassing sign to the fence. But the real storm hadn't even started yet. 2 days passed. I didn't hear another word from Karen, but early Saturday morning, just as the sun cracked over the eastern ridge, I found something in my mailbox that made me stop cold. An envelope, cream-colored, sealed with a foil-stamped HOA logo, and addressed to me in suspiciously careful handwriting. Inside was a neatly typed letter. Dear Mr. Coulter, we are pleased to welcome you as a community-integrated property owner within the Whitetail Heights neighborhood structure. Based on your proximity and recent verbal interactions, the HOA has approved your voluntary integration under our Extended Perimeter Agreement, Section 4B. As part of this transition, please provide 3 full-access key sets to the HOA's Community Safety Office within 72 hours. Failure to comply may result in administrative procedures, including escalation under municipal community ordinances. We thank you for your cooperation and commitment to shared safety values. Sincerely, Karen Howley, President, Whitetail Heights HOA. I stared at the letter, then read it again. Voluntary integration. Based on verbal interactions? The only thing I'd told her was no. It wasn't even a threat. It was worse. It was soft paperwork theater, meant to imply I had no choice. I scanned the rest of the envelope. No legal citation, no ordinance reference. Just vague bureaucratic language designed to intimidate. I wasn't intimidated, but I was getting very, very annoyed. I took the letter straight into my office and scanned it for my records. Then I called my real estate attorney, Morgan Lane, in Phoenix. She picked up after 2 rings. Coulter, morning. What's on fire? Not yet, but someone's holding the match. I explained the letter and read the text aloud. There was a beat of silence. That's not legally binding, she said, and it's written to feel like an official enforcement notice without actually saying anything that would land them in court. So it's pressure. Exactly. They're hoping you fold, but if they keep escalating, we'll respond. Copy that. Morgan instructed me to file a certified written response rejecting any claim of voluntary participation. I drafted it that night and dropped it at the post office Monday morning. I figured that would be the end of it. I was wrong. That Thursday, I found another envelope, this one marked Urgent Community Compliance Notice in bold red. Inside was something much more dangerous, an acknowledgement of HOA integration, allegedly signed by me, dated 3 months prior. At the bottom was a notary stamp, slanted, blurry, and a sloppy scrawl of a signature labeled G. Coulter. Only problem? I never signed it, and the notary license number expired. I looked it up immediately on the Arizona Secretary of State website. The license had been invalid for over a year. Now it was personal. I took the forged document and all previous materials to the Pinal County Recorder's office the next morning. The clerk on duty, a blunt woman named Angela, raised her eyebrows as I spread out the documents on the counter. This came from Whitetail Heights HOA, I explained. They're claiming I voluntarily integrated. That's my parcel number. I pointed to the GIS printout I'd brought with me. Angela frowned and tapped through the county database. Your parcel's separate. No annexation. You're not under their CCRS. She tapped again. And no update request filed. I showed her the fake signature. Angela examined it closely, then shook her head. This is not in our records, and if they submitted that to anyone else, it's fraud. You might want to call the sheriff. She photocopied the forged page, gave me an official verification letter stating that my land was not under HOA governance, and added, if they file anything with this, we'll flag it and notify you directly. Back. Home. I scanned everything again, including Angela's signed letter, and sent it to Morgan. She called back that evening. They're forging documents, Coulter. That's criminal. We're shifting from defensive to offensive. I'm preparing a cease and desist and notice of pending legal action. Good, I said, because I don't think they're done. She paused. You're expecting more? I'm expecting escalation. They didn't like no. They faked a yes, and they still think I'll fold. I looked out my office window at the fence line. They haven't even started getting desperate yet. I don't sleep easy when I know someone's testing my perimeter. The night before it happened, I kept having this itch at the base of my spine. Nothing specific. No motion alerts, no strange sounds. Just a gut feeling that something was off. I double-checked the cameras, made sure the motion lights were working, set the perimeter alerts to high sensitivity, and tried to forget it. Didn't work. The next morning, it was just past 6. I walked the property like I always did. I usually start by checking the southern gate, the one with the double padlocks and heavy-duty steel chain I installed after Karen's little key request. I knew something was wrong before I even got there. The air was still. Too still. Then I saw the gate. The chain was gone. The padlocks were on the ground. One of them cracked and bent like someone had gone at it with bolt cutters. The upper hinge was broken clean through, and the gate had been pushed open and rehung improperly, and right next to it stood a freshly installed plastic sign, bright blue and white, mounted into the dirt with rebar. Future Ho Park Whitetail. Heights. Community nature access. There were flag markers staked across my property line like some deranged land surveyor had been on a sugar high. Pink and orange ribbons fluttering across the gravel like confetti at a corporate hostage negotiation. I stood there, jaw tight, breathing through my nose. Then I spotted it, a broken key fragment still wedged inside the lock that had failed. Someone had tried to pick or force the lock before cutting the chain. I took photos, every angle, close-ups of the gate damage, the fake sign, the markers. Then I called the sheriff's department. The dispatcher didn't sound surprised when I said the name Whitetail Heights HOA. Third call this month involving those folks. She muttered, "Stay put. Deputy Rollins is on his way." While I waited, I walked deeper into my property. The fence line on the west side had fresh scuff marks, like someone had tried to climb over and tripped, dragging their boots along the panel. I found tire tracks just inside the edge of the property, leading to nowhere. No vehicle present, but the message was clear. We were here. Deputy Rollins arrived about 20 minutes later. Big guy, quiet, good handshake. He let me talk without interrupting, nodded a lot, and walked the scene with me slowly. "Looks like forced entry to me," he said, crouching beside the snapped lock. "And this key." He held up the fragment I'd bagged in a sandwich bag. "Definitely not yours?" I shook my head. "Never seen it." That chain was intact as of last night. He took photos of his own, made some calls, and then said the magic words. "We're opening a criminal mischief and unlawful entry case. You'll get a report number this afternoon." I asked if we should expect Karen to show up. Rollins nodded slightly. "Wouldn't be surprised if she does. Though they usually wait until you leave." I smirked. "Then I'm not going anywhere," and I didn't. That afternoon, I posted 4 new signs along the fence line. Private property, no trespassing. No HOA access. Violators will be prosecuted. But I wasn't done. I called Morgan, my attorney, and gave her the incident number, photos, and timeline. She wasn't surprised. "This fits a pattern we're seeing in predatory HOAs," she said. "They fabricate legitimacy, escalate to property intrusion, and rely on your reluctance to engage." "Good thing I'm not reluctant," she laughed. "Exactly. Now, document everything. If they come back, you call the sheriff again. Don't confront them yourself unless it's self-defense." The next day, the cameras caught movement near the back gate at 2:13 a.m. 2 shadowy figures in hoodies tried to get past the motion lights. The lights triggered. They ran. I downloaded the footage, filed a supplemental incident report, and forwarded it to Morgan in the sheriff's office. Then I took a shipping container from my fabrication site and parked it lengthwise across the front gate, reinforced it with concrete blocks, and locked it down with a tow hitch lock and steel cable. If they wanted in again, they'd need a demolition crew. I wasn't playing anymore. By the following weekend, the Whisper campaign had gone public. Saturday morning, I woke up to a flyer taped to my gate, my mailbox, and, bizarrely, one zip-tied to my solar panel mount. The headline was in red bold caps, "Community Alert, Illegal Private Takeover of Designated Green Space." Beneath it, a photo of my land, taken from outside the fence. It had arrows pointing to my house, container, and marked unauthorized structures, blocked access, and site of future park. I read the whole thing twice. It accused me of illegally enclosing land that was meant for future community development, preventing families and children from accessing designated walking trails, being a recent land grabber who was not from this community, and refused all peaceful communication. There was even a call to action. Join the HOA and neighbors this Sunday at 4 p.m. to demand accountability from Mr. Graham Coulter. They spelled my name wrong. Twice. I scanned the flyer, saved copies, and sent them to both Morgan and Deputy Rollins. Morgan's response was immediate. "This is targeted defamation. We're filing a cease and desist." Rollins was more direct. "You want us to assign a deputy to the rally?" "Just say the word." I said yes. That Sunday, at exactly 4 in the afternoon, a crowd started forming at the edge of my southern fence line. About 40 people, mostly HOA members, a few teens, some elderly couples. Many held printed signs. Stop the land lockdown. Return the park. Open space for all. No more gates. And then, of course, Karen arrived. She pulled up in the white Lexus, stood on a foldable crate, and raised a bullhorn. The deputy I'd requested, Sergeant Cruz, a calm, middle-aged guy with mirrored glasses, watched from the gravel shoulder, arms folded. Karen launched into a speech, her voice sharp and dramatic. Fellow residents, we are here today not to attack, but to protect. This land, this very land behind me, was always understood to be part of the Whitetail Heights Green Corridor Plan. We were told it would one day be our park, our trail, our space. A few people clapped. Others looked confused. Unfortunately, she continued, an individual who claims to be exempt from the community, a man who refused even the most basic requests for safety access, has locked up this land and is now blocking our future. This is not just selfish. It's a threat to our neighborhood's well-being. Then came the kicker. We have documentation, she said, holding up several packets, that show this land was intended for limited community access, and that this man signed preliminary agreements to that effect. My blood turned to steam. There were no agreements, no permission, and whatever she was holding, they were forgeries. Cruz leaned over to me. Want to make a statement? Not here, I said. I'll let her finish digging. Karen wrapped up with a call to peaceful resistance and invited neighbors to continue placing passive markers around the perimeter to remind me that we're watching. As the crowd began dispersing, 2 teenage boys hopped the fence on the west side and tried to plant a cardboard sign labeled Future Swing Set Zone. My motion sensor lights hit them immediately. I walked out with my phone raised, recording. You're trespassing, I said calmly. Step back. One of them froze. The other muttered, It's just a joke. Cruz stepped in, ordered them off the property, and took their names. This isn't a joke, he said firmly. This is private land. That night, I checked my cameras obsessively, no further intrusions. But by morning, the Whitetail Heights Community Board Facebook group had posted a photo of my container with the caption, Blockade set by outsider property holder, refuses to cooperate with community safety plan. I knew what this was. Karen couldn't beat me legally, so she was trying to turn public pressure into leverage. Fabricated history, manufactured outrage, and just enough technical vagueness to make uninformed neighbors think I was hiding something. But I wasn't hiding. I was documenting. And I was ready. It landed like a missile on a Monday morning. A certified envelope slid across my kitchen counter. My name, bold black ink, return address, Whitetail Heights Homeowners Association Legal Counsel. The moment I saw it, I knew. This wasn't another flyer, another demand letter, another community tantrum. It was the opening shot in a lawsuit. I sliced it open and unfolded the contents. 8 pages, dense legal language, and enough bolded phrases to make my jaw clench. Petition to reclaim public easement land. Unlawful private occupation of green space parcel. Temporary structure in violation of community standards. Demolition of non-conforming structure. They were suing me for adverse possession of intended public space, claiming my land was never meant to be privately fenced and my modular home was a temporary technical facility subject to removal under community code. It didn't stop there. Attached to the petition were a copy of a transfer agreement, allegedly signed by me, a notarized page, again with that fake notary stamp from before, a set of photos showing my container with notes calling it community obstruction, and bizarrely, a community support statement signed by over 30 residents, many of whom, I later found out, had been told this was about trail restoration. The implication was clear. HOA was trying to seize my land by force of narrative and paperwork. I called Morgan. Her voice was ice. This is what we've been preparing for, she said. You'll countersue immediately. Not just for declaratory relief, but full damages, harassment, defamation, and attempted fraudulent claim on real property. Good, I said, because they just claimed my house is illegal. She laughed, sharp and short. Let them try. I want you to do 3 things today. Take updated photographs, get your county parcel map, and meet with the notary who handled your original land purchase. We're going to build a wall of documentation they can't climb. By noon, I had a letter from the developer reaffirming in writing that I had explicitly rejected HOA membership upon purchase. A sworn statement from my notary confirming no HOA addenda existed and that any document implying such was a forgery. A certified parcel report from Pinal County, proving my land was never annexed into HOA territory. Morgan reviewed it all and filed a formal response and counterclaim by end of day. Then she brought in the big guns. A licensed forensic document examiner, a graphologist, reviewed the HOA's so-called signed integration agreement. Her report was devastating. Signature on document does not match verified specimens of Mr. Coulter's handwriting. In addition, ink pattern suggests signature was mechanically duplicated using pressure transfer. Translation, they traced it. That alone could carry criminal penalties. But Morgan wasn't done. She subpoenaed the HOA's notary logbooks, which they were legally required to maintain, and found no record of the transaction they claimed existed. That meant two things. One, the notary stamp was likely stolen or fabricated. Dusra, the document was never notarized at all. I forwarded all this to Sergeant Cruz, who had already flagged the earlier broken lock incident. His response was blunt. This might be enough for a criminal referral. I'm sending it up to our property crimes unit. By Friday, my counterclaim had teeth. Harassment, attempted fraud, defamation, filing a false claim on real property, and, most serious, forgery of legal instruments. Morgan included a request for punitive damages, citing the coordinated nature of the attack and the pattern of escalation. That night, I got another knock at the gate. It was Tom Keller, a neighbor, mid-40s, lived 2 streets over in Whitetail. He looked uncomfortable. "Can we talk?" he said through the bars. I let him in. "I need to apologize," he said. "They told us this was about a park trail. Karen passed around a paper asking for support to reinstate the original neighborhood easement. I didn't realize they were trying to steal your land." "You signed?" "Yeah." He looked ashamed. "So did a bunch of others, but we didn't know." "You do now." He nodded. "Some of us are talking. People are starting to doubt Karen, especially after the flyers. They're getting out of control." That was the first crack in the wall. But I wasn't counting on public opinion anymore. I was aiming to bury them in court. The Pinal County Superior Courthouse stood like a fortress of bureaucracy. Beige walls, sun-bleached columns, and the kind of stale air that reeked of dried paper and rehearsed lies. I walked in with Morgan at my side. She looked like she was born in that suit. Sharp navy, silver pins, eyes laser-focused. I was carrying a locked briefcase. Inside, the evidence that was going to dismantle an entire HOA board. We weren't alone. 3 rows ahead, Karen Hawley sat upright in a tight beige skirt suit, flanked by 2 men in ill-fitting blazers, her counsel and 1 HOA board member, probably the treasurer, judging by the sweat on his temples. She didn't acknowledge me. She was too busy pretending I didn't exist. The clerk called the case. The judge, Honorable Dana Monroe, glanced down at the file with a neutral expression, then back up at Karen's side. Plaintiff Whitetail Heights HOA seeks declaratory judgment regarding disputed land classification and community easement rights. Defense has filed a counterclaim alleging document forgery, harassment, and attempted fraudulent seizure of private land. We'll begin with preliminary arguments. Morgan stood. She moved like a knife through fog. Your Honor, before we dive into the merits, I respectfully request the court to consider the urgent need for injunctive relief. My client's property was unlawfully entered. There is ongoing misrepresentation of his land status by the HOA, including posted signage falsely designating it a community park. We ask for an immediate cease and desist order. Karen's lawyer objected, claimed it was community, misunderstanding, claimed Karen had documentation of voluntary integration. Then he did something astonishing. He passed forward another version of the so-called transfer agreement. This one was even sloppier than the last. Blurry signature, scanned notary stamp, mismatched date. Morgan didn't blink. She stepped forward with her own exhibit binder, slid it to the clerk, and tapped the top page. Your Honor, we've had this document examined by a certified forensic document analyst. The signature was not only forged, it was mechanically transferred. Additionally, the notary whose stamp appears on the page has confirmed, under oath, that this document was never witnessed and that her physical seal was never used in such a transaction. Judge Monroe looked up. Are you suggesting criminal forgery? Morgan didn't hesitate. I'm stating it directly. And I've attached an affidavit from the document examiner, the notary public, and the original property developer. The judge raised an eyebrow and turned to Karen's side. "Do you have original copies of this agreement?" Karen's lawyer opened a folder, fumbled, looked over at her. She didn't move, didn't meet the judge's eyes. "They appear to have been misplaced. I'm told they were in archive." "Convenient," the judge muttered. Morgan went on to request an expedited hearing. Her tone was still measured, but with edge. "This case isn't a dispute over yard gnomes or paint colors. This is an attempted seizure of private land through fabricated legal instruments, and my client, a veteran and taxpayer, is being slandered by the very organization that has no authority over him." Karen's side objected again, claimed we were grandstanding, but the judge granted the request for an expedited hearing and ordered all HOA documentation and internal meeting notes to be turned over within 10 days for forensic review. Karen twitched. That twitch was everything. After the session, while we were exiting the courtroom, I caught sight of a young woman waiting outside, holding a manila folder, nervously chewing a pen cap. She stepped toward me. Her name was Angela Rivera, former administrative assistant for the HOA. Just recently quit. "Are you Graham Coulter?" "Yeah. I heard what happened inside. I need to tell someone something." She handed me the folder. Inside, emails between Karen and the HOA board, including a thread where Karen openly discusses soft-forcing that guy on the South Plot into compliance and asks the board to vote on installing fake signage to pressure him into surrender. It also included a scanned version of the integration agreement, dated 3 months before I even bought the property. I looked at Angela. "Why now?" "Because I didn't sign up to be part of a criminal racket, and they told me to shred things." "I didn't." I nodded. She added, "And if you need me to testify, I will." That night, I called Morgan. Her voice was steady. "We just got a star witness. We're going to win. But Graham, brace yourself. People like Karen don't go down easy." It was just past 11 p.m. when the motion alert pinged my phone. My security cameras, I had 4 now, plus a motion sensor tied to a solar-powered floodlight, had caught something. Or someone. I slid out of bed, opened the live feed, and froze. 2 figures were inside the gate. Inside, the gate was still shut, but they were on my property. One held a flashlight, scanning the far end where my storage shed stood. The other was fiddling with what looked like a toolkit. I didn't waste a second, threw on jeans and boots, grabbed my phone and the baton I kept in the hall closet, and ran out the back. By the time I circled around to the front gate, coming in from behind, I could hear them talking. "Just pop it. It doesn't matter if it's loud. Karen said he's violating perimeter code." "Shut up. The camera's facing the other way. Just hurry." I hit the floodlights and yelled, "This is private property. Hands in the air." Now they jumped like I'd shot a rifle. One dropped his bag and bolted toward the gate, slamming into the latch. The other tripped trying to follow, and that's when I got a good look. He was wearing a jacket with Whitetail Heights property liaison stitched across the back. I called 911 and reported it as an active break-in. Sheriff's deputies arrived 12 minutes later. By then, the trespassers had vanished into the night. But they left behind their toolkit and a small plastic clipboard with a printed work order signed by Karen Hawley, claiming fence assessment for shared community boundary under HOA jurisdiction. One of the deputies, a tall guy named Trotter, squinted at the form. "You sure this isn't a community easement?" "I have the land deed on file. My gate's intact, my fence is 10 feet into my property line, and this entire parcel is privately owned." "I don't belong to any HOA." The second deputy, younger and more alert, seemed to believe me, but Trotter gave me a long look. "Well, Karen's a well-known figure in this district. She says the HOA had cause. We'll need to follow up with her. You can press trespassing charges if you want, but be advised, if this goes to civil court—" "It already is in court," I cut in. "And your department just walked into a felony investigation involving forgery, attempted seizure of private land, and a coordinated break-in." I handed over a copy of the court filing. Trotter looked annoyed. The younger deputy said he'd file a report and took photos of the dropped tools. The next morning, I got a call. Morgan's voice was sharp. "Graham, we just got an emergency notice from HOA's attorney. They're filing for a temporary injunction to block you from installing additional fences or locks, citing safety concerns for the neighborhood." I laughed bitterly. "So they break into my land, and now I'm the threat." "Not to worry," Morgan said. "We're counterfiling today. But Graham, I need you to know something else. We just got a subpoena for the HOA's internal emails." "And?" "There are some redacted portions. and one email chain that includes a message sent to the Pinal County Sheriff's Office directly. It's from Karen. She describes you as a potential radical with anti-community sentiments and requests the sheriff to treat you as a security concern. I went cold. She's trying to paint me as a threat. She's trying to get you removed preemptively, Morgan said. But we have a former employee and a chain of forged documents. And now, evidence of criminal trespassing with intent to alter your land. That day, I called Angela, the former HOA assistant, and asked if she recognized the names of the two people on my security footage. She did. They were HOA volunteers, one of them Karen's nephew. She added something else. Karen's planning a community walkthrough next week. She's invited a county assessor and is calling it a public outreach event. On my land? That's the thing. She printed flyers that mark your property as a proposed community commons. I didn't laugh. I didn't even blink. I picked up the phone and ordered 2 more cameras, a higher gate, and began drafting a sworn statement for the sheriff's department, this time citing the work order, the video footage, and the name of the intruders. It was war now, not just over fences or signatures. This was about the right to exist on my own land without being erased. The morning of the final hearing, the courthouse lobby was packed. Neighbors from Whitetail Heights, local journalists, even a county supervisor stood whispering along the walls. Word had spread, not just about the lawsuit, but the break-in, the forged documents, and rumors that the president of the HOA might soon be in handcuffs. I walked in with Morgan on my right, calm and sharp as ever, carrying a binder the size of a phone book. On my left was Angela, the former HOA assistant who'd agreed to testify under subpoena. Across the courtroom sat Karen. She didn't look like the confident tyrant who'd knocked on my gate months ago. Her face was rigid, powdered to hide the stress, but her hands trembled when the bailiff called the session to order. Judge Hawthorne didn't waste time. We are here today to resolve the civil dispute brought by the Whitetail Heights HOA against Mr. Graham Coulter regarding parcel 147-5-83-9. Mr. Coulter, you contend your land is not under HOA jurisdiction and has been the subject of trespass, forgery, and harassment. Counsel, proceed. Morgan stood, confident. Your Honor, we will prove that my client's land is not under HOA authority, that any suggestion otherwise is based on fraudulent documents, and that members of the HOA, including its president, knowingly trespassed and attempted to expropriate land through criminal misrepresentation, and then the evidence began flowing. One by one, the original notarized deed showing my property was never part of Whitetail Heights. A sworn statement from the developer affirming I'd opted out of all HOA covenants at the time of sale. Security footage from the night of the break-in, with Karen's nephew clearly visible, holding a clipboard with the fake work order. A forensic analysis by a handwriting expert confirming that the signature on the so-called membership agreement wasn't mine and didn't match any registered alias. Testimony from Angela, who revealed Karen's internal emails ordering emergency reclassification of Coulter's lot as open use zone, despite knowing it was private land. Then came the collapse. Morgan requested that the HOA present the original agreement Karen claimed I'd signed. The opposing counsel hesitated, then produced a blurry, crumpled document with a name scrawled across the signature line. Only the name wasn't mine. It was Gregory Coulter. Judge Hawthorne leaned forward. Who is Gregory Coulter? Karen whispered something to her lawyer. Morgan stood. Your Honor, that name belongs to a former HOA board member who passed away last year. We have a death certificate. He has no relation to my client. The courtroom broke into murmurs. Then Judge Hawthorne raised his hand. Silence. This document is inadmissible and irrelevant. It is not only legally worthless, it appears to be a deliberate fraud. Morgan didn't stop there. She handed the judge an email chain between Karen and her nephew, recovered by Angela, which read, if we say it was voluntary entry, we can claim control over the gate. Add Gregory's name, no one will check. He's dead. The judge's face darkened. Bailiff, detain Ms. Hawley for questioning and clear the gallery. Karen's mouth dropped. She tried to speak, stammering about community safety and gray areas of interpretation, but the bailiff was already walking toward her. She didn't even resist when they took her by the arm. The hearing ended within the hour. Judge Hawthorne issued a full ruling. My land was never part of the HOA. All integration notices and shared use claims were legally void. The HOA was guilty of trespassing, attempted land seizure, document fraud, and civil harassment. He referred the case to the Pinal County District Attorney for criminal prosecution. The cherry on top, he ordered the Whitetail Heights HOA dissolved pending investigation. It was over, but not quite. 2 weeks later, Karen was indicted on 5 felony counts, including real estate fraud, conspiracy to commit forgery, and criminal trespass. Her nephew and 2 board members were also charged. She was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. Her name would never again appear on a ballot, on a community board, or on my gate. In the weeks following the trial, things changed fast, not just for me, but for the entire community. Whitetail Heights HOA was officially disbanded. The county posted legal notices at the community center, and within days, the signs and logos started coming down. Contractors removed the HOA's surveillance cameras from street poles. The gated entrances were reopened. A few homeowners even stopped by my gate to apologize, saying they had no idea Karen had dragged the entire board into felony territory. One man, a retired firefighter named Joel, offered to help rebuild anything damaged during their park stunt. I declined politely. My land wasn't for public access, and after what happened, I made that even clearer. I commissioned a new custom steel gate, heavy-duty laser cut with a message that spanned its center: private land, no access, no HOA. Ever above it, I mounted a small motion-triggered speaker that played a loud warning beep whenever someone approached. No more surprises. Meanwhile, Karen's legal problems deepened. Investigators raided her house and found multiple HOA files, blank membership forms, and 3 forged notary stamps, including one matching the fake documents she'd submitted in court. Her nephew confessed during interrogation, claiming she'd pushed him to help secure community assets. She was convicted on all counts and sent to Perryville Women's Prison for a 12-year sentence, without the possibility of early release due to the sustained pattern of organized deception cited by the judge. Her mugshot made local news. The headline read, "HOA President Guilty of Land Fraud, Sentenced to 12 Years." I watched the segment once, then turned off the TV. I didn't care about revenge. I cared about never letting it happen again. So I took it a step further. Using my design background, I launched a small initiative to help veterans and low-income landowners learn their property rights, teaching them how to read plats, verify deed restrictions, and defend against HOA overreach. A month later, I was invited to speak at a zoning committee hearing in Tucson. Then came an offer from the State Housing and Resiliency Office. They wanted to fund one of my modular housing prototypes for a pilot program. Funny how things turn around. I spent 3 years building something quiet for myself. I had no intention of becoming a symbol of anything. But sometimes trouble comes to your fence, and if you don't stand up, it takes your whole yard. Now my fence stands higher, my locks are smarter, and my story helps others lock their gates too. It's been exactly 1 year since the trial, and today I return to the front gate, not to check the locks or replace any signs, but just to stand there, quietly. The sun was rising over the desert like it always did, crisp orange bleeding into pale blue, the peaks of the mountains throwing long shadows across the sand. The steel gate still held strong, unmarred by time or weather. The words I had etched into it still caught the light in the same way. Private land, no access, no HOA, ever. A hawk soared overhead. I leaned against the fence post and just breathed. The land behind me had changed too. The prototype structures I used to build for clients, they now formed a complete micro-village, self-powered, storm-rated, fully ADA compliant, and 6 of them were occupied, not by tenants, but by veterans transitioning out of homelessness. Every one of them had a key, just one, and no one ever asked them for a second set. The irony didn't escape me. The land they called a community park became a permitted research site, approved and funded by the state. The HOA's Nature Zone was now a solar farm and graywater garden. The same patch of sand Karen once tried to seize was registered as a prototype for autonomous emergency housing. I walked the perimeter trail I'd built behind the main structures, half a mile of gravel, solar lighting, and shade mesh that ran the full boundary. Cameras still recorded every angle. The security firm still patrolled. But in truth, nothing had happened in months. Whitetail Heights. They still exist, but without the HOA. Homeowners voted in a voluntary neighborhood council instead. No dues, no fines, just a group chat and a yearly BBQ. People wave now when they pass me on the road. And Karen. She never filed an appeal. Word is she's working in the prison library. Some say she's tried to blame the whole thing on bad legal advice. Others say she's silent. Doesn't matter. She's exactly where she belongs. As I turned back toward the house, I noticed a package at the gate. Inside, a hand-carved wooden sign left by one of the vets. Burned into it, in perfect black script, were just 5 words. Freedom lives behind this fence. I smiled. No HOA in sight. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe that was permanent.